Okay, so in this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about siblings. Now, I'm pretty sure, we all have siblings, um, or some not, some we might be an only child, but uh, there's this thing where, we have, this sort of dynamic with our siblings. And whether you're the oldest or the youngest or the mid child, depending on how many children are in the family. It's there's always, some sort of like, relationship with your siblings, right? Um, and especially when at a young age, that's when those relationships are sort of formed. Um, and so that's that's kind of like how it is, with when it comes to having like a brother or a sister. and um, and from experience, I kind of had that, with my two younger sisters. So I had, yeah, I had a good relationship at the beginning when we were younger. We basically, did everything together. Like we played video games. We went vacations together. We went to school together. We, we talked to each other, all the time. And those were the times, when times were good. and and because as we're younger, we kind of have to lean it because family is kind of important. Like you family is pretty much the people that you can trust. And so I had that with my sisters when we were younger. uh, but as time moved on, eventually we kind of grew, you know detached from one another, as in like sort of like lost connection with each other. Like as we got older, we started like slowly like shifting away. It was around like middle school when I kind of like kind of lost that sort of you know like sort of like kinship with my two younger sisters. Um, and I mean, the funny thing is like we all live in the same house together, but it's just that we don't really talk as much as we used to. Our communication just got less and less. We just kind of like did our own thing, and we never really kind of shared anything with each other. And so that was a huge turning point with for my sisters and our relationship. And so mostly because they're girls and they kind of depend on each other. Well, one is obviously older than the other. I mean, I'm the oldest. Like I'm the only you know boy in the family, in the children and the kids side. So like that's why they kind of lean on each other for just to kind of like I mean, it's kind of hard. It's they're basically kind of dependent on each other, and kind of like not really thinking about like anyone or anything else. Like especially like in middle school, that was like a huge turning point for them. Um, and not just with me, of course, but also with like their relationship with their parents. Our parents had gotten like significantly strained. Um, they became more rebellious. They stopped doing the things that they did when they were younger. So, and we used to grow up playing soccer a lot, so that they stopped doing that when once they reached middle school. Um, and they were just kind of I mean, I don't want to go too into it, but it's like it's mainly they, it's just that relationship isn't really there anymore. And so I can go on and on about them, um but yeah, for the most part it's just kind of hard to like sort of find, that sort of like, that tangent line where you can like reach them, because I mean, because they're girls, right? They can't, they're, they don't always, interact, with me. And I don't think that's, I know it's part of the norm, or like, brother with brother and sister with sister. I just kind of wish that, I just kind of wish like it had more, we kind of communicated more often. Um, because, I kind of hoped, and I still hope, like, one day that we do our way back, they find their way back to, like, reaching out, reaching out to me. And same goes for myself. Like, I remember, like, I tried, I kind of stopped at some point, but like for years I've been hoping that we could, you know, reach, we can reach like a connection. And it was kind of hard because I realized that, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And that's a phrase that I kind of stuck with, that somebody shared, that um, I really taken to heart. And I'd really taken. And so that's why, for me, like, I didn't want to, like, push being like, push trying to, like, invade. Like, I didn't want to, like, push it. So that's why I kind of left it alone for a long time. I didn't want to. I just wanted to respect their boundaries, because that's just how our, dynamic is now. Like, we're just very detached from each other. And compared to like like other siblings, it's like, even though you don't really, like, talk to each other as much when you get older, like, you still communicate, to some extent. and for in my situation, it's a little bit different. Like, it's usually, when something bad happens, like, if something bad were to happen to one of us, then we would try to reach out. But other than that, it's not like a normal sort of, or like or like anything, like, just normal interaction. It's like we kind of walk past each other. Like, it's like strangers living in a house. um and so that's why it's just kind of hard to, like, sort of reach out. It's sort of hard to, like, reconnect with them again, or reconciliate with them again, because it's because sometimes, it's it just takes long. It might take longer than expected. It might not be right away. um so, and it's not like, I haven't, like, given up hope or anything like that. But I'm just kind of like, hoping that, I can find that bridge that kind of, you know connects us together again. uh but I realize it's going to take some time for, for that to happen. And so, like, with siblings, I think you learn a lot from having a sibling. Like, you get to learn how to have, patience. You get to learn how to interact with people your age. You get to learn how to, just learn how to, learn how to, really just learn how to be be a person, like what you are in the house, like who you are here in your most, private moments is who you're going to be out there. You're going to display that out in the real world. And so, because usually, siblings, they either, work together or they work individually. And so in my case, it's basically, very individually. And so, because we kind of go off and doing our own thing. I mean, my sisters are basically, their sort of like relationship is like, they're basically, working as a team, or I guess, in some cases they work, in a lot of cases they work as a team. Whereas when it comes to like, to me, it's like they don't really want a part of that, for me to like, they don't want me to join them because, obviously because I'm a boy, and because, there's other reasons why, but which I won't really talk about, but it's you get to, I mean, obviously you get to like, a certain point where we all kind of like come together and kind of discuss things out, and that's kind of like what we did, earlier this year. And it wasn't like, it was because there was something that happened, and and it kind of caused, a moment, and and one of my sister, one of their, in our lives, where we just had to do something about it. And so it basically we had to like, think of a solution, which didn't really change the situation, but it kind of like, I guess you could say, lessened that. It was just between, amongst our family. I mean, that's, and so, like, it was like a huge breaking point, within our family. And so we knew that we had to do something, and we did, and it worked for a while. But I mean, we're still kind of like going through it. I mean, yeah, when it comes, yeah, so, so that's why, yeah, because I don't want to share too much about like our family situation, like in terms of like, our relationship, as a whole. But I just want to like, honestly, I know, like, it's just gonna take some time for all of us to like come together as, like as a unit. But I guess for, for people, for those of you who have siblings, those of you who, communicate with your siblings, I think that's a good thing, especially at a young age, because I think it's when middle school, it's like when, a lot of things kind of, turn out, differently. It kind of makes us, kind of do, kind of like, because we're basically coming out of elementary, right? And that's the era where we're like, that's the stage where we're like, kind of finding out who we are a little bit, before we reach high school, before we, we reach adulthood, So, so I'm pretty sure it's like, I'm pretty sure a lot of us don't really, never really enjoyed middle school as much, because it's basically like we're kind of coming out of like, elementary school, and we're kind of entering, a much like more older state. We're entering another stage of our lives. And so, I was definitely one of them. Like, I didn't I think we all kind of like survived middle school, for the yeah, and so um, but it does we do come out of it like, different than we were before. Like who we are in middle school, we we either change in some ways or we change a lot, in high school, entering high school. So, um, but yeah, I think when it comes to like siblings, I think siblings should be like kind of like hand in hand, like everyone should come like hand in hand with one another, and not really treat it as like a like as like like strangers, um because that's something that I've kind of had to deal with for a lot, and I'm still kind of dealing with it now. Because back then we were kind of like, because back then when we were younger, it's like we all kind of hold each other close, held each other close. But as we got older, life kind of took a turn, uh, for all of us, and so um, for me, it's like I kind of want you kind of want to go back to those days where we had each other's backs, and I mean we still do, but it's now it feels like more like it's more like a command than like I want to like be there for you. So, but I'm not like complaining or anything like that. I'm just kind of like wanting to talk this over, like obviously siblings fight. We say a lot of mean things to each other. We do things to each other. Sometimes we can get a little physical, and I think that's like normal. That's the normal part of having siblings, is that we fight and then we make up and then we just kind of like move on. But I do think that as we get older, our relationship does change, and for those who who haven't really you know really healed from the past, it really does cause a strain in the relationship, and just like things that are unresolved, like they like for some siblings, like for those who don't really have everything figured out yet, or really have anything like any like all the broken pieces fixed, like it just it's just like you can't really get something back, like you can't really you can't really get the old times back, right? You can't really bring time back, but you can still try to make new ones. And so that's something that I hope for with my with my siblings, because definitely times were good back then, and I kind of wish those days are like still here, um, but I don't expect anyone to like feel pity for me, because I know like there are like people who have it way worse, or they never talk to them again, like like siblings, they never talk to each other again, like living their own lives, having their own like families, over the most petty reasons, and that's kind of like what's worse, because I still live with my sister, so like um, hopefully there's still a chance that we can reconcile, uh, while there's still time. But right now it's just like it's like it's a time where we still need to like we all need to just like like learn to come together and not really hold on to the past, which is something that I'm still trying to learn how to let go of, because I still, like, there are definitely times I definitely have like a lot of bitterness, towards them, uh, and it's something that I feel really bad about because I know I'm supposed to be like you know I guess you know the person in my family with like the person of faith, because I think because I want to be a light to them in the best way that I can. And it's like it's like another spirit. I don't know, like like I really don't want to get into it, but I don't know. I feel like there's just this war that's going on, like between I guess between good and evil, like one spirit and another spirit, like working together, like fighting against each other in this household. And so I kind of like to think of it like that. And it's kind of like 50-50, because it's like because I mean I'm kind of like the only child in this family that goes to like church and tries to read his Bible and pray and do all these things, but I know that I know that I know that there's definitely something going on within our family, that's like there's like the battle that we can't really see that's going on. And so um and that's that's something that I kind of get that that sense where it's like there's something trying to like attack our family. And it's I know that this is a little bit off topic, but that's kind of like how I feel when it comes to that. Like they just don't really understand things like I do. Like we don't share the same core values, and so that's why our dynamic is very detached, because they don't really share any, like, I guess, moral values of what's good and what's bad. It's just, it is what it is, and what feels good, that's kind of what they run to. As for me, like, I can kind of discern between what is actually good, what is actually bad. And so so that's kind of like me with that's kind of like me in my case. But I didn't intend to make this like video too long, but this is just kind of like my take towards siblings. Like I think there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's always some good. There's always times where it's definitely it definitely feels like a war and going on, and then there's gonna be times where we don't really think about it. And so that's something that I kind of wanted to share. It's something that I wanted to kind of get off my chest. But yeah, that's just kind of what I wanted to share.